Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions, one of Games Workshop's short-lived projects. But why did it disappear as fast as it appeared? Well, let's go have a look. The TCG was published by PlayFusion in 2018, just 1 year after the company's first game, Lightseekers. Both games were envisioned as digital and physical games, while Lightseekers was envisioned to be a full-encompassing universe with toys, comics, the game and other things. Warhammer Champions was more of the traditional TCG. Champions featured many of the same mechanics as Lightseekers, however it improved on them. Much to its benefit, it got more complex. To the players' base surprise, in 2021 the game was suddenly cancelled. An explanation why the game was cancelled was never given by PlayFusion. Who designs a TCG is usually a very interesting fact. However, for Warhammer Champions, there is no information. It can be assumed that it was the same people that designed Lightseekers. There is some information there, however that can't be verified. Why PlayFusion refused to say this is impossible to say and up for speculation. The digital client released for mobile devices, PC and the Nintendo Switch. Let's dive into some of the details of the game. PlayFusion released a total of 3 sets for the physical game. The first one simply called Champions. The second set was released Onslaught. Then after that followed Savagery. Aside from these sets, they also released starter packs, which they called campaign decks, and so-called warbands. The warbands is an interesting product as it combines living card game product features, as in where some of the cards were always the same, as well with 3 boosters. And the idea behind this was that you could theme out your deck with a specific champion. All in all, over 600 cards were released for the game, with the base set having the most at 278. A booster pack contained 13 cards with 6 common, 3 uncommon, 1 rare, and then 2 cards which could either be blessing or champion cards. One of the cards in the pack was always guaranteed to be a foiled card. There are 4 factions in the game from which players construct their decks. The factions are Order, Destruction, Chaos, and Death. Within these factions, the players can mix and match different armies, and this helps them create synergies. The game had 5 different card types: spells, abilities, units, champions, and blessings. The champions came in 3 flavors: wizards, warriors, and warrior wizards. The card anatomy is quite similar to most other TCG, however with some notable differences. At the edge of the card there are little grooves which allowed players to scan their cards to add them to their collection in the digital client. Also, on the corners the cards had values. This enabled one of the most significant unique features of the TCG. And with mentioning that unique mechanic, let's dive into some of the gameplay details. In Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions, players construct a deck of 38 cards. The deck contains 4 champions and 4 blessings. What champions the players choose is of great strategic importance. Each champion costs a certain amount of points, and every player only has 20 points from which to choose their champions. Each player starts the game with 30 base life points, and depending on the heroes they chose, this number can either be corrected up or down to a maximum of 35 life. The first player that drops to 0 health loses the game. The game takes place over 4 lanes on the battlefield, and at the start of the game, the players take turns to place their heroes in the different lanes. Again, this is very important to their strategy. Once they are placed, the players shuffle up their blessings and put them face down under their champions. The game is divided into 4 phases: the placement phase, the battlefield phase, the action phase, and the draw phase. The placement phase is unique in that it only takes place at the very start of the game. In the battlefield phase, the players then turn their cards once. And why that is important, I'll get to in a minute. Important to know is that this always triggers from left to right. In the action phase, players can take actions, they can play cards, or they can pay to trigger a heroic act. A heroic act is like an ability, but is so strong that a player needs to play one of the actions for this. In the draw phase, players can draw for every action they did not take. Every player only has 2 actions every turn. So it's an important decision what they want to do with this action. Do they want to play cards? Do they want to trigger a heroic act? Or do they want to save it and draw cards? What makes this game different to other TCGs is that the cards rotate every turn. They do this until they leave the battlefield. When they leave the battlefield is determined on how many corners they have. It's shown on the card, but at a maximum of when it's turned 4 times and it's back facing the way it did at the start, then it leaves. The cards can do different things when they are turned. Another important factor in the game is completing a quest. Each champion on their corner has symbols, and this indicates what must happen in their lane for the champion to rotate once. Once all the 4 corners have been completed, they've completed their quest. And this means that the blessing is then turned face up and starts triggering. This can be a number of things, but usually it's a very strong ability. So making sure that the champions complete their quests is crucially important to the players to make sure they can win their game. So now with that we know what the game was, who published it, how it worked, and more about all the different products, let's have a look at why I believe the game failed. Before I get into why I think the game failed, I want to talk about a few things that I liked about the game and a few things that I did not like that much. The first thing I want to talk about is the production quality of everything released. All the products are really high quality, they're well packaged, they're well designed, and the quality of the cards especially is really nice. The backs of the cards have some structure to it, and that makes it really nice to the touch. I really like that. Interesting to me also, and this is something I like, is that the cards don't have a cost mechanic. So you don't have a mana curve where you can only do certain things if you have enough mana or similar things. It's naturally restricted to the base rules of the game. And that makes for some really interesting strategic decisions. And that leads me to the next point. The game mechanics overall are really interesting. And with the different champions and how they're restricted, the blessings, the lanes, how the cards rotate and when those triggers, it offers a lot of room for strategic decision making, for deck building, and really offers a lot for players that really want to sink their teeth into. I think PlayFusion really did a great job at designing this game. I also like the fact that you can scan your cards and you can add anything that you bought physically into the digital games. Many other companies would have made you buy the cards twice, sell you digital packs. There are games who do that out there. I like the fact that you can scan the card and it's added to your digital client and you can use it and play it there as well. A few things that I didn't like. When considering the huge amount of art that was available to PlayFusion for their cards, I don't think they really did a great job of utilizing it. First of all, on the cards, the art is small and restricted. They should have made better use of the great art that they got, and some cards look fantastic. Also, some art, they made some choices where the art is black and white, or it just, I could imagine there was better choices to be made. It also looks like there was no lore being utilized for the products, except for the warbands that were supposed to theme out your deck. Why didn't PlayFusion make more use of the fantastic backlog of lore that is available through Games Workshop? There's decades of lore there that they could have used for flavor text or other things, and players love that. So why did they not make use of it? I really wish they would have made more use of it. Turning cards is a fun mechanic, but at the same time, for a player that is new or doesn't know their cards very well, it's difficult to read the abilities printed on the cards when they're sideways or upside down. That then leads to constant taking the cards and putting them back down again. So perhaps this is actually a mechanic that, while innovative, unique, and generally great, works better in a digital client. So having gone into what I like and what I dislike, I want to share some thoughts on why I think the game failed. It's a fact that Games Workshop gives out their license like candy. Over the years, there have been over 60 physical products, and don't even get me started on their digital offering where there is probably hundreds. While that is not a factor that I believe contributed to the failure of the game, I do think it says a lot about how much Games Workshop is willing to invest into a certain project. I do think they just throw things at the wall, see what sticks, and if it doesn't immediately take off, they're just as happy to drop it as fast as they started it. So in this case, I don't think Games Workshop supported PlayFusion a lot in making sure that the product is a success. There are clear indications that there is misalignment within PlayFusion to what pricing support for organized play was supposed to look like. The first announcement was that there was going to be a lot of cash pricing for their organized play that then later had to be rolled back. And not only that, it was rolled back after some of the qualifying events for events where prize money was supposed to be paid had already been played. So players put in effort and then suddenly the pricing changed. And it was changed significantly from prize money to just products, so booster packs, play mats, tokens, and other things. One source claims that this happened because the participation in one of the first events was much lower than anticipated. There were roughly 20 players that showed up for an event where they were hoping for at least 50. So it looks like the team around the game was not aligned with the top of the company, and that then led to it being rolled back, which caused quite a bit of commotion within the community. Furthermore, the game suffered from some balancing issues, and balancing in a TCG is crucially important, as it is important to players to make sure that multiple strategies are viable. Nobody wants to play a game where every deck looks the same and you have to play that one deck, or you can't play the game, right? You're not going to be competitive. A third factor, I believe, is that there's a potential there that the digital client cannibalized the physical card player base. People are naturally lazy, and it's much easier to fire up your digital client at home before going to bed or when you have a couple of minutes, instead of going down to the closest LGS. It's more convenient, you can get a few games in, and even if you're practicing for organized play and you're serious about being competitive, getting a few games in at home is much more efficient than going to the LGS. The simple truth is that despite everything that the game had going for it, and I do believe it had quite a few things going for it, the game did not generate enough interest to have a player base which made the game profitable for PlayFusion. Production, organized play, and all the other things all cost money. And it looks like with the sales that they had and with the interest that they had, the cost just didn't justify what they were getting back. PlayFusion built on what they had with Lightseekers, they enhanced that, and they built a fantastic game. Sure, there were some points to improve, but in all, it had a lot of potential. I think the downfall was here that they wanted too much too fast. Creating 2 TCGs and including digital and physical products was a lot to ask from a young company that hadn't existed before their first successful Kickstarter. If you like what you saw about the game here, it's actually very cheap and easy to get. So it's a great experience for the kitchen table, and I can wholly recommend that you get a box and you experience the game yourself. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.